Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, this is master class number 4, and I'm going to backtrack a little bit here to explain some terminology and some technologies. Now, we want to first start off with the common terms. Now, there are several terms that pretty much mean the same thing, which is radionic, psionic, psychotronics, and scalar. And to some extent, what's been mixed in as well is the term orgone. In general, we're talking about manifesting machines, and there are slight differences between all of them. And there is no uniformity of understanding of this, and everybody uses the terms how they want to, depending upon their background. We'll go over them quickly. As I mentioned in a previous masterclass, radionics came from Ruth Drown, who thought these machines put out some sort of radio wave. Albert Abrams, the person who started the basic understanding of this, called it the electric reaction of Abrams, which is not used at all. ERA is not used at all. Nobody is using that term. Things have pretty much flowed into and have stayed in the radionic field because Ruth Drown brought the thinking over to England, who started some organizations and made it semi-legal. Legal in regards to medical treatments, but not really. You can't make any claims. You can't do anything else. You're allowed to do some quasi-practices. It's very confused, and really you can't get a straight answer. And of course, all the people in England have done nothing for 60, 70 years and have created nothing. And yet there is a school over there where you can go for 3 years and learn nothing. Okay, so we move on to psychotronics. I've always liked that term. Psycho meaning mind, tronics. This generally came from Eastern Europe, as the term biophysical did instead of psychic. I like these terms, but nobody uses them. Psychotronics is generally thought of as shape vibrational devices. Because of their shape, they produce energy, and they can be very complicated shapes. And we could call shape energy would be a pyramid. Then we get into the term psionics, which some boobs in the UFO movement are starting to call their psychics psionic people. Just shows you how stupid they are and the wrong use of a term. Psionics was generally made popular in science fiction novels, and still is used in the fantasy world in Dungeons and Dragon type situations where they call it psionics. It's generally a term nobody uses. Again, I like that term, psychic electronics, which is what you're really using. I do like that term. Because of the fact that it just makes sense. But it's been delegated to Dungeons and Dragons and games and fiction literature. The latest term that everybody is using that really describes things in the best possible manner is scalar, which is the term I use now. Scalar means a non-electromagnetic energy field, which is what these machines and all manifesting machines put out. They are not electric in nature. There's no electromagnetism coming out of these machines. If there was, you could put a meter next to them and you would be able to pick up the electromagnetism. So radionics is quite a misnomer, as was Ruth Drown, unfortunately, who had some interesting stuff, but basically never really was able to hit the ball and failed every time she was tested. But did set up some very interesting things. She built very primitive machines, but those primitive machines are in use today because that's what everybody copied, because they copied the British machines, which Delaware copied, or was even given the diagrams to make these by Ruth Drown. So in this day and age, basically, they're scalar machines. Most people are using scalar. They want to move away from the term radionic, which internationally is thought of poorly and is illegal if in the way that it is used. And I can remember Ruth Drown was using it medically, even though she wasn't a medical doctor. She was a chiropractor. And no matter what you're using, doing, or whatever you call it, you cannot practice medicine without a license. And this energy has nothing to do with common healing that doctors do. I always like to say that in this field of manifesting technologies, if you're using it for well being, generally the energy works from the outside in, working on what is considered by regular science as nonsense, which is energy fields that interact with physical fields that create change. They don't believe in any of that. So the whole idea is that you're not really doing any of the type of things that would be considered medical. It has nothing to do with it. It's apples and oranges. Medical profession generally treats you from the inside out. So that's how I kind of explain it to people, so it's completely different. But radionics really is not a term that's used anymore except by the ignorant. The problem is that if you don't use that term, which I put in most of my YouTube videos, etc., nobody knows what you're talking about. Most people have no idea what scalar means. But those who really want to define what they're doing and want to stay in a particular understanding call their practices scalar. So that's what we have to. The other wild card, which is what I'm going to talk about here and give more time to it, even though I've explained it basically, is Orgone. And Orgone is one of those things that was pushed upon the public deliberately to mislead them and push them in the wrong direction. It was started by the well-known Satanist Carl Hans Wells from Magitech. He developed what he called Orgonite, which is his trade term and is a type of energy that's supposed to, or I should say, a mixture of powders that are supposed to draw in orgone. Now, orgone was discovered by and named by Wilhelm Reich, the Austrian scientist, or I should say psychologist, who worked with Sigmund Freud, a psychiatrist. He basically was born in the Ukraine, but spent a lot of time in Austria. And of course, which is very typical of the people of that region, he was totally and completely sexually obsessed. These are very deviant race of people out of the Middle Europe in these particular countries. And of course, he discovered something and he named it after coming, orgasm. Well, that should say everything about how sexually obsessed he was. But that's a very small part of his work. I mean, basically what Wilhelm Reich did, training under Freud, who claimed that everything was connected, or almost everything was connected to sex, but Wilhelm Reich said everything is connected to repressed sexuality. So everything that bad that happens in your life and in the world is because of this suppressed sexuality. And he went out and basically preached open sexuality, what we would call today free love, and people not being expressing themselves sexually, and developed all sorts of therapies and other things. But he used to go around preaching that people should basically what we would call today be very open sexually. And this, of course, got a lot of negative feedback from many people. And when he came to the United States, the FDA learned of it and pretty much labeled him as a sexual pervert and deviant. And the head of the FDA at that time was a really kind of a nut job, who, from what I understand, there's reports that he used to put boards up when he invited in a woman's on his desk so they couldn't see directly at each other, something like that. But it can show you how strange this person was. Now, he was really not persecuted for his medical practices that he was trying to do in his claims, which he never really did, from what I understand, never claimed to cure cancer, but was, I don't know if he was treating people for research purposes. I don't know if he cleared it with the FDA or not, but the bottom line is that they saw him as this sexual pervert and deviant, and they went after him. He also was further framed when he finally was brought to court and told not to be selling his devices interstate, meaning that you becomes under federal law if you do that. When he was away, matter of fact, doing a huge test with his Cloudbuster, a device that he could clear rain or cause rain, someone within his organization sold equipment across lines. Obviously, that was a setup, and the person did it deliberately so they could then go after him. He was either bought off or threatened or whatever it was. And when he broke his agreement with the court systems, he then was immediately would be arrested and put in prison. And of course, he went to prison. He went to court again for this issue, and stupidly tried to fight with the court what he thought was going on and how his energies were so real and everything else. The court didn't want to hear that anyway. He was already convicted that what he was doing was worthless, and so he's not a very bright man. In general, Reif was not very smart, and nor was he a very good person in general. Wilhelm Reich was a chain smoker. He ate poorly and was overweight. He used to have sex with all of his patients he had that he was treating psychologically. All of this is part of his immoral activity and his sexual obsession. Just as Freud and just as most of the scientific and psychological people from Central European Arabs that they are, because they come from Arab countries, are. So it's and highly sexual suppressed as well. And certainly he was. He had several marriages, etc. And in general, if we talk about this energy, what is this energy that he discovered? Now, he claims to have been able to actually, that this energy that is created by the atmosphere, not from the earth, but the energy that is in the atmosphere that creates life. So there's an energetic form to life, which is pretty much has been boiled down now to 7.8 frequency. Now, this is very low energy. And as such, being very low energy, it's very difficult to really do anything with it. And it doesn't really do much. And also, you never generate this type of energy. You accumulate it. Wilhelm Reich made orgone accumulators out of putting two separate types of material together. A lot of this, it's still a controversy of exactly what these things are, what he actually put. And he would put these in different layers. So there's two layers. One would be non-organic, so to speak, things as much as plastic against what would be natural wool. But there are many formulas talked about, and I won't go into that here because it's kind of boring. But he would put together a large unit that you would sit in, and he would have multi-layers of this. Two different layers, but he would repeat this 100 times. He would then accumulate the orgone that way by just what accumulation does. You're not generating it, you're accumulating the energy. So that's very important to understand to begin with, because there's no such thing as an orgone generator. You don't generate orgone. It's a natural earth energies that cannot be generated, very much like gravitrons and everything else that are very elusive. Now, he called this energy bions and claimed that he could see the bions and that he could reproduce that they were actually there. I don't particularly buy that, even though there is some studies saying that that may be the case and some researchers messing with this energy. And certainly it is something that deserves a bit more research. But in terms of a manifesting energy, it is worthless. It is totally and completely worthless. Now, Wilhelm Reich himself said that the energy really did nothing. He claimed he put people in these boxes of multi-layers and that they felt a little better. Well, he did treat many people for cancer, and this is not coming from me. This is in his actual written documents, which are available. He kept good records. He wrote a lot of books, etc., that every one of the patients that he treated for cancer, they all died. With the kind of stupidity saying, yeah, but they felt a little better just before they died. Well, this is the kind of nonsense you get from Reich, and very typical of that. And because of his sexual belief systems that were not really accepted by most of society, most people wanted nothing to do with him. They figured he was just a sexual deviant, and he went from pillar to post and was able to set up a particular institution. I believe it's in Maine, which is still there. Somebody owns it. He wrote a bunch of books on orgasms and everything else. And, he's been kept alive today in terms of his books and other things, strictly because of the fact that it had to do with sexuality. So it's a way of these little nerdies walking. Like one actual famous researcher said, it's fun walking around campus with a book with the title of it is Orgasm. They consider that to be sexual. That's how these little nerdies that get involved in this trash area. So the point is that by accumulating this energy, it was supposed to do something. And he claimed he had all sorts of different effects, but really couldn't do much with it. The bottom line is he never cured people of anything. The energy is so subtle and so low level that it really doesn't do anything, as most atmospheric energies are. They do sustain life in the bigger picture, just like gravity is extremely weak, but it does keep you from flying off the earth. So we do have to understand all of these things. But just the fact that a scientist, which, they are egotistical maniacs and really goofballs in general, most scientists, who like to name everything after themselves, which I find very despicable personally. I mean, there are thousands of people that go into any scientific discovery, and one guy that finds something unusual or unique or writes a good paper then names that energy after them or what's going on. I find that offensive. There's so many people and so many researchers. We should keep to a general term, which is also more understandable, instead of naming it after somebody, which is the height of egotism. So the bottom line is that, and of course, he did do that. He named it after orgasms because he was so sexually possessed. So the whole idea is that him, and of course, it was fueled by his association with the other sexual deviant who got his patients hooked on drugs because he was paid to, Freud. But he didn't like Freud because Freud was not sexually obsessed enough. So he broke away from him to do his own little thingy. It's very interesting when you get into these things, understand that. So the point is that he claims you can use this, and what happened with that was nothing. His basically, he was when this illegal sale happened of some of his equipment and sent over state lines. He was in Arizona putting together his Cloudbuster. Now, Cloudbuster is something that actually affects the atmosphere using tubes and other things. It's a pretty simplistic device, but it hooks up to water and other things. Again, I'm not going to explain it. It looks like a multi-barreled cannon as pointed to the sky, and this can produce rain and also disrupt rain clouds. You can disperse the clouds as well as bring them in and create a lot of rain. That particular Arizona experiment produced a huge amount of rain and supposedly drew in wet conditions for quite some time. You're talking about one of the driest places in the United States, which is in Arizona. So there certainly is something there, and we are a world that really needs that technology. We need to bring rain into important areas for crops and for drought situations for people's survival. It's also been claimed by modern researchers that they were able to repeat this effect as well. James D'Amato, the famous one who's been researching Orgone for 50, 60 years, who recently just died of cancer. Yeah, that's right. Living in an Orgone type community with a giant Orgone accumulator steps away from his house, he was unable to do anything with his cancer. So it doesn't work on cancer, and it doesn't really work at a high level for anything other than this odd, strange, and pretty dangerous tool called a Cloudbuster. People that use Cloudbusters and in general tend to get sick. D'Amato died fairly old. I can't really find an exact birth and death time, but he looked terrible. And there's another person who took over from him that was working with cloud or Orgone in general, and he looks terrible as well. So there's nothing life-giving and life-affirming by this orgone or orgasm or coming energy that Wilhelm Reich found, discovered, and was working on. Many, many more years of work was needed, and that has been done to a large degree. They seem to get lots of horny, stupid people that want to give money to any cause that starts with, has the word coming in it. But nothing has come from it, and the new person taking over seems to be even more apt I should say, less apt to release any potent information, stating that nobody should know how a cloud buster really works. So this is the kind of imbecilic stooges involved in Orgone. What came after that was, which is very typical of these Middle European Arabs that live in Germany, Switzerland, and Austria. Karl Hans Welz, being an Austrian and a Satanist involved in all sorts of activities and sexual perversions, as well as, I allege, criminal activity. It's hard to prove all this stuff, but he was running publicly one of the largest satanic groups at the time, which is still in operation today. Under other leadership, called blackmagic.com, which apparently is now located in Southern California. The point is, this is another evil lodge of perverse people doing nasty stuff, which, of course, is what old little Karl Welz did. Now, I knew Karl Welz personally. We were even in business together for a short period of time. He caused nothing but trouble. He didn't have any money. He was broke. He refused to do any work, and we eventually broke up because of that. And he caused trouble with my organization and with one of my major and the finest occult translator ever, Robert Blanchard, and tried to break us up. I mean, this is a real evil person, and the connections that Orgone in particular go throughout the entire community are a bunch of people who are Satanists and criminals. And if you find anybody using Orgone or Orgonite, well, it's pretty sad that they don't know who Karl Hans Welz was and the history behind him. So there is absolutely nothing there. I have taken apart many of his units, Welz's units, and you can see those on this channel, and you can see what's in them and how I tested them and show you the kind of left-hand negative evil energy they put out. And it's some sort of toxic powder that he makes. He combines these powders and he puts them in resin, and then he put them in his units. Now, his units are nothing special. They're just the same old, pretty much blank units with a couple of little components thrown in there, a few tiny amplifiers and resistors and a few other things. Certainly there's nothing going on. His units were originally built in Romania and then Bulgaria, which ought to tell you something about the pedigree of his connections. These are two well-known criminal capitals in Europe that handle all the criminal stuff. And of course, wouldn't that make sense? Apparently, after a while, he moved those operations back to the United States and was making machines here. His machines always were mediocre quality. They weren't really terrible, but he used stickers and bad dials and plastic cabinets. There was really the typical Satanists that don't have any creativity or style. He ultimately, his wife died at 71 because Orgone was so life-affirming. And it made you so strong. And of course, you had ads for that saying that martial artists and bodybuilders use this and they're doing wonderful. And he died in his middle 70s or early 70s himself as well. So shows you the fact that certainly this is not life affirming. Or maybe it was all the blood he was drinking that made him sick and his wife sicker. So the whole idea, was it baby's blood? Well, we don't really know, do we? But this guy is a scum of all scums, and all of the people connected to Orgone today, and Orgonite in particular, are, if you have one of those Orgonite machines, you've got a toxic piece of poison in your house. It's best that you get it, hit it with a hammer, make sure it's broken well, put it in a paper bag, then put it in a plastic bag and take it to the dump or get it off your property as soon as possible. Reselling it and or giving it to somebody else, you're giving them poison. I have tracked many people, and a lot of people have gotten sick and died from the use of orgonite in particular. It's got a negative, nasty spin. And most people, if you have one of those units, you can test it yourself. You'll find if you hold the pendulum over it, you will get a counterclockwise spin, meaning it's negative and bad. Nothing good has a counterclockwise spin. I've tested this. You'll get that off of poisons and cleaning fluids, and all sorts of things will give you a counterclockwise spin that are all very negative. And that's exactly what orgonite in general. But we have to also understand there's another big market of orgonite. They've been selling orgonite, or I should say orgone type nonsense, for quite some time all over the world. And why is this? Well, the reason it is because of the fact that it's a stupid idiot technology. Anybody can build what is considered an orgone product. You'll see many of them. Now, these are not orgone products that I'm showing you here, but this is a common type of thing that you would see of orgone pyramids. These things don't produce any energy whatsoever. These pyramids don't put out anything. They're too tiny. I find them very attractive, and I think they're cool decorations. And I'm going to use them for their pyramid power, which is virtually nothing, but I'm going to combine them together to produce a nice pyramid, mini pyramid, what you could call a charging station, or kind of like a little table that you can put things on top of. But all of these products built by other people produce absolutely no energy. There is a bunch of goofballs out there, particularly one organization that makes what are called little zappers, and they put this trash orgone in there, which is basically toxic resins mixed with metal shavings, which of course many of them are aluminum and copper, and Wilhelm Reich himself said never use aluminum and copper. These people don't know what they're doing. And people are buying into this because of the fact that it's so easy to make. So people are just getting ground up little pieces of metal and throwing some stones and copper in there and somehow thinking that this is going to create energy. Now, this type of, I don't know what you call it, stupid technology, idiot tech, does absolutely nothing to judge energies. And we have to understand that you just don't test something whether it has positive or negative energies. Well, you do that to get a ballpark reading. But ultimately, if you get something positive, you have to ask, is that energy able to make change? Is it strong enough to do anything? You know, all of these things here, which are very typical of orgone that are being sold everywhere, produce absolutely no energies, good or bad. And I've tested hundreds of orgone products, and 90% of them do absolutely nothing. The other ones, which they've added in some toxicities to, put out bad energy. But generally, stuff like this and all the stuff that you're seeing sold all over the place, and keychains and little rings and things you wear around your neck, do absolutely nothing. It's just a big waste of money. But again, any stooge out there, any guy with a 5th grade education can go out and get himself some resin, which is highly toxic, and you got to be very careful you don't breathe it in. There's been people that not only have gotten sick from the end result of orgonite, but they've gotten sick from making it, especially if you don't do it in a ventilated area. They also tend to gas, meaning they put off toxic plastic energies. These don't do that. These are lucite and they don't gas. That's a special type of plastic invented by the Japanese and owned by the Mitsubishi Corporation. The typical resin that you get from to make this stuff is very, very toxic. And if you have that in your home, it is gassing and it's creating some. Now, obviously, a little pyramid like this, if it gasses, is probably not going to cause you that much trouble. But if you have it in your bedroom and it's gassing all the time, and some people have these large things, and you add in toxic aluminum and the toxic copper that is made toxic by the preparation, then you're going to have some problems. I forget the name of the company, but one of the guys who was running this company, who was selling a lot of it, who basically copied wealth and had no integrity, ultimately killed himself because he was so toxified by the orgonite he was using that he didn't know what he was doing. And it was some sort of glider accident or something. But what are you doing? Well, he didn't know what he was doing. It was a stumble bomb. And of course, his family is out there still selling this garbage and toxifying people with this technology. It does absolutely nothing. And if it does do something, it's usually negative. They also claimed, they'd wrap up these little shavings in these little plastic balls and throw them at cell phone towers, and that would take the cell phone tower down. Yeah, right. Well, first of all, that is criminal, and secondly, a lot of people, including myself, depend upon my cell phone, and there's a lot of people that depend upon that for emergencies. So if you're going to mess up cell phone towers and cause the energies to be bad in them, this is a criminal offense, and these people should be prosecuted. It's dangerous and ridiculous. But who's going to arrest somebody that throws a little plastic ball of metal shaving someplace? Because this is going to deactivate things. Now, Orgone by Wilhelm Reich, there are all sorts of special materials he used, including what is considered ground rock, which was powdered coming from the earth, along with something that would be non-earth based, and this could be plastic and other things. But as usual, the people like James DeMeo and others never came out and talked about anything properly to be done in terms of saying how bad all this was and anything else, because they're rotten little cowards like the rest of the industry of these people. And they probably were threatened because of this whole criminal connection to Orgone and many different organizations as well, particularly different occult organizations, publishers, etc., who are all heavily involved in Satanism, unfortunately, as is a lot of the radionic industry. So you have to be very careful who you buy from. Who are they? What are they involved in? I mean, they openly go on YouTube as Satanists and will talk about radionics and the stuff they make. All these people are connected with the same group. You have to be careful. And if you get somebody else's tools with their information in it, their thought forms in it, well, you're taking that into yourself. This is another thing. These are consciousness machines, and you are opening up your entire consciousness to get these machines to work and connect to your target, and that means that's not a one-way door. It's a swinging door, and the energy goes both ways. So using bad machines made by bad people will cause you serious problems and possibly death. Do you understand that? So check into who you're buying from, where they're coming from, and who they're connected to. Very important to understand that. So, but if you believe the lies that people tell you, and you believe that resin with some BBs in it and a couple of little crushed stones, well, it's amazing that these stones are so powerful because they're in the earth. Wouldn't there be all sorts of earth, a big deposit of quartz crystal? Wouldn't that cause all sorts of problems in that area? It doesn't. And you're not going to put it in a tiny little pyramid like this. And tiny pyramids, no matter what's in here, produce no energy. A pyramid, to even have tiny, tiny effects, has to be at least a foot in height, and generally many feet in height, 60, 70, 80 feet. If you want to get any kind of real pyramid power, you have to build something that is large. And you will never find small pyramids in the ancient world. They didn't make them as toys. They weren't used anywhere else. The only thing that's ever been found that was small was an engineer's model who was building a model to represent what they were doing. Other than that, you'll find no pyramids anywhere used. And they don't have any power. Now, pyramid power is very fascinating and interesting, and certainly is another area that has been dropped, mostly because you need something large, and the usual, there is no money in it. Once the pyramid is made, it's free to use, and people have done this in the past, and they found that vegetables grow better in there and preserve better, and so many other things in pyramid power, which I won't go into here. If you're interested in that, look up in different books. There's plenty out there of what that kind of energy is. The story of Orgone is a pretty horrible one, from the guy who invented it and had all these problems, and eventually he died young as well. There is some suspicion because he died just before getting out of jail after his 2-year sentence. A few days before he was supposed to leave, he died of what was a heart attack. But he was a chain smoker, he was overweight, and he didn't guard his sexual energy very well either, so he drained his body. And certainly Orgone didn't make him healthy, wealthy, or wise. Again, it's an interesting energy, and we need lots of research into it. But Wilhelm Reich was basically a person sexually obsessed, and that's what his work was about. And his books are still in print, and people are still following him and doing his research because of the fact that it's sexually connected. I mean, isn't that the way the whole world is? So people are addicted to everything, and sex is one of the many addictions out there that people just can't deal with properly. So all of that is something that people have to understand of what Orgone is. So just because somebody talks about it, says it's wonderful, and sells tools and stuff so they can fill their pockets with money, doesn't mean it works whatsoever. None of these people and the years that they have put into this technology has ever proven that any of it has worked. And the ultimate proof is the fact that they die young. How come they weren't able to heal themselves? How come the #1 Orgone researcher, James DeMayo, died of cancer and quite rapidly, by the way? So if it worked, and if it, like a lot of people have been stating, that it cures cancer based on one newspaper article and some other gossip, it doesn't. Plain and simple. We have proof of that. Now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, as the #1 researcher living in a compound that had a giant Orgone room, died. And so did many people that went to there to see if they would help their illnesses as well. But there's a long list of people that have died and got absolutely no help from it. And this is documented by Reich himself in his research. So he admits it himself. So the bottom line is that it doesn't do anything. And the fact that it made some people feel a little better, well, these are very subjective, and this can't be proved in any way whatsoever. So the fact that you think you're going to bring that into your life, that it's going to create well-being and prosperity, it's nothing. So if it isn't toxic, you're falling back into the same old reality of that these are intention machines. They are psychic intentions. So you put your psychic intention in them, you dial the dials, you focus on a target, and you send them good energy for whatever it may be. Whether that's, stocks to go up, someone to be protected from something negative, or to increase their well-being in a particular area. So it still goes down to that, and all the Orgone machines have done out there is take the old junky 1920 technology of radionics and pour in this toxic crap in them. So these resins are horribly toxic. And again, if you pour lots of resins, like one woman did on YouTube, and I'm not sure she's even alive anymore, she didn't properly ventilate, and she has horrible lung problems right now, which eventually will kill her. And that's not even any effects from anything but the toxic resin they're being used. So, like most things in life, it's like all the plastic bottles that everybody is drinking water out of insanely. You're drinking huge amounts of microplastics. And, a bottle here and a bottle there, but we're getting plastics from everywhere. All of our food's wrapped in it. Almost everything we come in contact with. As a matter of fact, they think that a person digests about a credit card amount of plastic every month. So this is pretty shocking. But in general, this technology doesn't work. There is nothing to Orgone. And certainly what interesting effects could have been known, we probably would have never gotten that, even if he would have gotten out of prison. But because of the fact that he died, particularly when he was starting to test the Cloudbuster, caused serious problems. And as usual, stopped all research, obviously. And as usual, there was really nobody to pick it up or do anything, as happens with most organizations. Once the leader is gone, there's no forward moving of it at all. So nobody was really doing anything with this work, even though because it was Sex Baby, you found lots of people still reading about it, researching him to get their little sexual jollies, which generally they can't get because of these nerdy freaks that are pretty bad socializing or in general. They got turned on by this. I mean, how pathetic can you get? So orgone is a general term for the accumulation of atmospheric energies. Now, in general, the problem with the orgone accumulators, and this again was stated by Rife himself in his documents, his research documents, which were well written and organized. I mean, after all, that's what he did, was the fact that there was a problem because you would suck in all the toxins that are around you and the earths. So there's virtually we live in a terribly toxic environment, and the bottom line is that you can't accumulate anything from the atmosphere. It's super radiation. Hieronymus learned this with the cosmic pipes, which did something similar. They were just too toxic to use. So I hope that's clear, everyone. Until next time.